Hey everyone. So today we're talking more about MCP apps, MCP, and everything that's happening around this new crazy world that we are living in. So I'm JC, and I'm a designer and developer. And along with Toby, we are building Anchor Design, and we're here to learn something today. Toby, could you care to do a short intro?
Sure, I'm Toby. I'm CEO of Encore Design. My focus is really about the product and design and how it fits together and how we make this, everyone makes these things work really well. And I'll hand over to Ray.
Thanks so much. My name's Ray Dack. I'm the founder at State Change AI, where we focus on the hardest 5% of building software originally around low-code tech, and now really around AI, both building for AI and not just with it. And so I'm really excited to get to be doing this investigation with Toby and JC, to be learning about what matters in this world of what we're now calling MCP apps. And it is in that vein that I am so grateful that Robert Boulos of Snappy fame, and I have mentioned Snappy. I'm not ashamed to say I've mentioned Snappy to people from all around the world who have worked in the Xano ecosystem. They say, "Oh, Snappy, I know about that." And we're really privileged today to get to talk to the brains behind it. Where in addition to you being a leader in the world of agentic development, particularly around the back end, using Xano technology, you've also been doing some really cool stuff in the world of what we used to call MCP UI, and we're now calling MCP apps. So, Robert, I'm so glad you could join us today, and hope you could give us just a quick top line about yourself, and then I'd love to get into what you're working on.
For sure. Well, I certainly appreciate that. And thank you. And yeah, I mean, my background and my focus is everything to do with AI development, accelerated development, and especially when it comes to MCP, I feel that it helps with just creating tools and with creating capability that seems to have the only limit seems to be just whatever a person is exposed to, really, and just like their awareness of different problems and everything, and just so amazing how much you can connect these things. And it's with MCP and with MCP UI and these visual aspects now coming out, it's always a lot of fun to work with those things, because I think that they relate to people. They connect with people when they start to be able to see things, and then that's certainly something that hasn't been fully pinned down yet, I feel. And that's why it's also exciting. It's there are breakthroughs to be had, I feel, in this area, and companies are still figuring it out. So I'd be more than happy to share my screen. I can show
Please, yeah.
what that looks like for me. So here we go. And essentially, this is an example from ChatGPT. So ChatGPT Apps allows you to essentially really pull in an MCP that with very little adjustment to it. I mean, for me, I've had this MCP already working with OAuth for months, since the spec came out in April 2025 or March 2025, and it was already completely working with the same OAuth. I didn't have to adjust anything. It was already accepted by this interface here with ChatGPT Apps. And it was also, again, like in one afternoon, I was able to create this visual interface that you can see here, that as I click through, it's actually reacting. And this is, again, powered by an MCP. It's communicating with with my database, showing me visually what my MCP offers. And you can see that you're actually able to go through a few different screens and have options to merge entities, and kind of have this experience of where there's a bit of feedback now from me as a user. And this is something along the lines of where I thought, okay, if I'm using MCP tool and I want to be able to do my part as a human in the loop. I want to be able to, let's say, merge entities, or I want to be able to give feedback. I thought this was something. This is how I kind of pictured it in my head, and I'd say, okay, this is interesting. Like there is some potential here, right? To go about it that way. And if I look at here, for example, same thing, dashboard stats, right? Like to be able to show you as a user, this is what's going on in in your workspace. It is very interesting to see like what you can actually do with something like this. Same thing, you can come and like look at here's your inbox, for example, and here's if you want to compose an email. Actually, this works. So I can actually send. I would send it to myself when I'm working with like this and testing, but this actually is able to send an email through my own email, powered by Google. So and again, like this was actually wasn't my main focus. Like it really, all of this stuff was already working out of the box when it comes to 90% of it, because it was just like developing a regular MCP tool. But then the lift really came in just creating this visual aspect for it, and I thought this was just a lot of fun, even just to make, and it just started to open up my mind to what's possible. So I'll just pause there for a second so I don't just monopolize everything.
That's so cool, man. So like, can you maybe show us a little bit as you do this, like, creating the UI elements or having them inside the flows, or, good for some visualization, how it integrates, right, with the rest of the experience. So like you got this thing popping up. What caused this thing to pop up? Like, what is it that you do in the conversation that was driving that? So maybe if we were to scroll up to understand how it gets into this, and if we were to scroll down below one of these to understand how then it feeds back into the experience you're having with the with the agent.
Sure. So I would say that like in this conversation, this is going to be more of like a development conversation where I'm expressly asking for it to render this. Okay. However, I would say that when I look at what causes it to render this, it actually goes back to the design of the tool itself and its visibility into whether or not it can see this tool itself. And I know that it can because I designed the tool, which like we've discussed before once, where we're like we have a few different meta tools for I mean there's a few different ways you can structure MCP, but all to say that when it looks at the tools that it has, it can see that there's widget tools that are very apparent to it. So as soon as I'm saying, actually, one thing that I kind of had a problem with it was actually that it tends to use these tools very freely. Like I didn't actually have a problem with it wanting to use the tool. That was one thing that I found very quickly early on, that I was like, okay, at least it invokes itself quite well. And as long as you have it defined as, hey, here's the widget, this is for showing your database tables, for example. And then when I come in and I say, hey, what's going on with my Xano? Like, show me what's going on my Xano workspace. It will tend to use one of those widgets. And then it gets into, yes, the smoothness of the experience. That's where I started to iterate quite a bit. And I felt like there was questions that popped up into my head that I hadn't considered before. Like, for example, even just with this window, is it going to move me is it going to move me down the page? Is it going to just re-render within the same? How far is it going to take me in this flow? Is it going to kick off another flow within this flow? And then what are the permissions for it to be able to do that? What is the feedback that it needs from me? What is it trying to collect from me? There was a lot of questions. There were so many questions that it kind of even made me pause for a second, because I was like, I could already tell this was getting me into a dangerous area where I was like, I wasn't sure, because I didn't have an idea yet of exactly how to turn this into, something that I could bring into the market. So made me pause for a second to just consider all the, what are my opinions in that area, and form them a bit more before I really went into like developing a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, certainly, brings this is, so in order, to answer to the question, how do you invoke this? Really, it's just about asking for it. I found that to be saying, hey, please, I want to see, show me a widget, for example. Please use your tool. Show me how these widgets are working. Tends to bring it up and seems to work.
That's super cool.
Can I ask? I mean, you've obviously got a bunch of people using your MCP service. Have you had a lot of? Is the MCP UI stuff part of what you offer as a product now, so people can use it? And if so, are you seeing much uptake? One thing I see is a lot of people kind of looking at it. I haven't seen a lot of people using it kind of in anger, where really clear use cases yet. And I'm always curious to see how people are using these things and what they're finding when they try and build it, because it feels very powerful, but it's hard. I think people are finding it hard to kind of really find the things that really make it fly.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say this is not the main way of using it at all. I might be the only person who's used it this way for the tool in particular. It's kind of like an Easter egg, where like if somebody were to use it and just be aware that it does this, and they were to take it into ChatGPT, it would work for any of the users. But I'm the only one who probably has done that. And I do work pretty closely with the main power users of the Snappy MCP tool. And I can say that, yeah, like there's definitely, like if we're talking about getting real development done, when it comes to the Snappy MCP tool, this is, again, like not there yet, because I suppose it's one of those things that has to, that's what I'm looking for, is the hook for where do I start to dog food this? Where does it become relevant for me, where this creates a lot of capability? And I feel that that's what I'm consistently searching for. So as like the MCP apps has recently come out, that again like piques my interest. Of like, okay, what does this look like now? What is the experience? And part of that, I think, for me as well, is looking at what the big players in the space have done, and saying like, so how have they built their experiences? Like, what is the cutting edge of this apparently like look like? And that's also something that I'm looking to see with MCP apps, what that looks like, because honestly, I used for example the Canva one, and I was kind of underwhelmed by the Canva ChatGPT app. I was like which is an opportunity. It's not to say that I'm not the type of person to look at something and say that it can't be better. That's very much opposite of me. I look at it and I say like, well, okay, they've decided to make this. How can we make it better? And at the same time, interesting to see where they've brought it to.
Robert, would you mind bringing that? We've been looking at your, I think your CRM, your personal CRM so far, right?
Yes.
But you've also done this for the actual Snappy MCP product as well, right? I see a couple of those chats in the history. And the reason I'm asking about that is sort of getting to Toby's question, like, how does this stuff really get used? Because I think it's worth looking at these, at the MCP apps technology in a continuum, right, of other things we're finding are really useful technologies around, working with AI and agents. I think about like skills, right, which is also something that's more recent over on the Snappy side. Like you were sort of, you were an OG MCP, and then you had, a Claude file, and then you had a skill for it. Now we see some other bits here of sort of having more of the UI elements. And look, all of this is new territory to Toby's point, right? So I'd love to have your thoughts as a builder and as a thinker in this space of how you think about, how these things fit together in terms of actually helping with, helping with productivity for something as complicated as software development.
I think that there's a whole area of well, the more complexity that we can just absorb, and that's like certainly something I've tried to do with everything that I try to make, is just try to bring it to where people are willing to be interested, I suppose, in wanting to work with these things. And anything that you can do to be able to bring it to people, I find it to be fun in that way. Like I think that, and I find it to also be appreciated. For example, to be able to just collect information and present a like wizard type of flow to be able to collect whatever the user's intent is, and then be able to guide them through that. There's a lot of people who are have a lot of resistance to using the terminal environment, for example, for something like that. They don't want to go into Visual Studio, like they're intimidated by it and all those things. And I think, yeah, like, so there's also cognitive load, for example, like when you're like the AI is trying to confirm something with you and it wants you to know. It's very easy to just glaze over, like you just kind of enter like a malaise of like, yeah, where the stuff flying on the screen, like, yes, I approve of it all. But it's a nice way to work, you know, back and forth with the machine when it's able to show you something that like, hey, here's what your database table actually looks like, and here I'm going to show it to you as an actual database table, not just a bunch of stuff that's like unintelligible to you. Or let's say there's something wrong with your function stack, for example, in Xano, which there's plenty of times, instead a way for it to render that to you and show you exactly, here's a highlighted red part. This is the part that has an issue, right? Like it, and yeah, and all that stuff just takes like insight into the actual technology that we're working with, right? And like, and being, I wouldn't be able to know those specific things would be appreciated by people unless I had personally been able to appreciate it myself through doing it through that loop. So that's why it's important. That's why even the only thing that drives this is really getting into that dog food loop. So I have to catch something and then find it compelling enough to drive me forward with that. But yeah, I mean, like when it comes to the visuals of this and like development, I think, like I said, I host like a call every week, like on Wednesdays and I have people who they are building apps. I actually had a lady who only started using Xano like 2 weeks ago, and she built so many APIs now in Xano, like working APIs, and she still doesn't really know how to use Xano because the tool allowed her to just operate at that level, you know, extend her capability, and she doesn't sign into Xano. Like there's a distance between her and the actual usage of the platform, right? Like she's just using it by proxy through this tool, but she was willing to still swim to a certain island to be able to get there. She was willing to work with the terminal and the CLI, and there's a whole larger group of people that are not willing to swim that far. And this is, I think, where I'm trying to meet them. I think they're somewhere here. They're somewhere in this chat interface. And is it challenging to get there? For sure. But I think, is it doable? For sure. I mean, we put people on the moon. We can get ChatGPT app to run. So basically, this is the table of action items that are back in my workspace in Xano. And I mean, it's kind of funny because it actually all goes back to we're looking at the innards of the previous app that we were looking at before. So there's something that powers that app. Well, this is now the tables, right? Which is the point that we're looking actually at something that is not just a table. This is not an Excel sheet or something. This is the actual database table that's over on Xano that powers the rest of the things that I use in my system. And instead of it telling me about it or saying, okay, this is what I see here, and there's some kind of a roundabout way of explaining it to me, it can show me the table, and it represents itself just like how you would see it over on Xano, which has database tables, which has APIs, which has a whole bunch of different primitives, which make up the foundation of whatever it is that you want to build. And there's so many of them. Xano is such a huge platform that now all of a sudden we can get this visual experience. And if I actually come down over here, I can see also API groups, for example. And this like also shows me like, here are my API groups in Xano. And really, this is actually where a lot of my challenge was in my time and energy, was just making it look, you can see that I'm still iterating on it, that it doesn't look perfect. And that was part of really where my energy was going towards, which was, okay, like being able to decide what is experience here going to be like, and optimizing it for this view. And obviously this one, I would want it to be wider, right? To use the space that it has. And also when I was first making it, it was looking, it just made no sense. I would want it to also be more, more narrow in terms of the row height and everything. And there's, it goes a long way, right? For the experience. And then again, like being able to click on this further and then to see within the API groups, what are in these groups. And honestly, even just this in itself, I could already see this being very helpful, because I already, like, as a person who goes through this loop quite a bit, I can say that this would be very helpful as an interview step. Like, what API group do you want to work in? Can you click on it? Can you just show me? Like, there's so much to be said, I think, for staying on the same page. And that's it really, if I'm, again, like, looking at this and thinking in terms of not just for myself, but for like the people that I design these tools for, this is something that, when I'm working with them, that, and even just when I'm also for myself, when I'm looking for points where things tend to be like where we get off the same page, where the AI is not, it's not easy for the AI to communicate to me exactly what it is that it's perceiving things to be. Or when it wants to capture feedback from me, it's not easy for it to even easy for it to represent whatever state or its perception of what is true in a way that, if it is not true, would immediately raise red flags in my head, that this is a way for it to really get my attention very quickly. And like, again, there's one thing I find that's fun about it. I purposely tried to make it look like Xano. Like, I wanted to make it also cognitively easier on the person, so that when they see this, they see what they're already used to seeing. I actually took a page from your book, Ray, on that with your state change extension. I thought about how you just, really tried to put it where, in line with where people already have learned and gotten their habits to being accustomed, to working in Xano. And so, yeah, exactly. Taking a page from your book on that. So yeah, just I'll pause there.
Can I ask a question? So, and how interactive is this? So you're displaying, for example, the API groups, or maybe the data as a better example. Can you actually alter the data through the MCP? Can you change row 3, or what sort of actions can you do? Was this to view only? Just so I can understand the sort of interactions with it.
Okay, so that's actually something that I have tried to push forward in, and I've been able to make progress with it in certain aspects. Like, for example, before, the other example I was showing was that you're able to send out an email through my account by actually putting in that information. So what that's doing is actually it's firing off another MCP tool for it to be able to even do that. So it, without asking for further permissions, or anything else, which is on, part of the tool design and everything. But all to say that, yes, there is a series of there's capability that the ChatGPT Apps SDK exposes that allows you to be able to control aspects like that. And I have not personally put it into this part of it yet, but like one thing that I've considered, I'm not sure if it's possible. I'd like to think it is, but I will find out. It's inline editing, for example. And I also wanted to consider, do I even want that? I wasn't sure. Like, because I was like, do I want to be able to edit it from here? I had to ask myself that question. So I ended up going down the email route, because like, okay, I'll send it. Well, you know what I mean. So yes, I found though that so far, like, as I was pushing in that direction, that I was able to get to where I wanted to go. I was like, oh, can I? So far, I haven't found an answer to be no when it comes to this. If I wanted to fire off another MCP, it works. If I wanted to load in, multiple groups of information, it also works, because these are all like these widgets. These are widgets, so these are entirely new tools that are combinations, essentially, like they're kind of building on top of the foundation of the other tools. And so I think going in that direction, I haven't found, even if it's not necessarily, let's say, enabled by the SDK or something like that, I would be pretty surprised if there wasn't some way of making it do what you want it to do ultimately, which might be why it's so locked down in certain ways.
I just have one other quick question. I mean, when you as you build some of these things, are there any what is there like a challenge you've seen with building MCP UIs or things that you'd like to that you think could be better in terms of when you try and build something that can hold you back? It's always
Yeah,
interesting to see when they're trying to build things where they got stuck or where there's friction and and how you kind of deal with that sort of situation.
for sure. I found this to be um, a quite there was a lot of looping around with this, and it was honestly it drove me a bit crazy when it came to getting it to where I wanted it to look a certain way, to behave a certain way, when I wanted it to be able to just control the experience. Do I want it to send up a new, like I would, for example, I click on something here, and then and I'm just still staring at it, and I'm not sure if something happened or not. Meanwhile, down the page, like something else popped up, right? And like I didn't even know that it popped up, right? Like there's
Right.
and there's things like that happening on the page that I feel, yeah, like that there's almost another dimension to the interaction that uh I feel I would benefit from my workflow would benefit from just being more in control, or at least being more aware of what are all those options and how they kind of orchestrate this experience. And because it all greatly impacts what the user is experiencing. And I think that there's, maybe the difference between them using it and not using it could be in those touches.
That's really interesting. That's exactly what we are learning as we are going through different ChatGPT apps that are out there today, is that a lot of the, let's say, fragile experiences, they break when something like this happens, right? Like when you tap on or click on something and then you're not sure what's happening, or you expect something to happen and it doesn't in a clear, it's not communicated either by the widget or by the chat. So I think everything, UI, widgets, and the chat itself, they need to really work in conjunction in order to offer a good experience, right? So that is probably the more than, I would say that more than thinking of all that is possible to build, really when building these experiences, we should be thinking how to make the simplest flow possible work really well, right? So, and I think this is really, going back to the channel use case, for example, for the tables, which I see you're doing here.
Yeah.
I think that would be, even if you cannot interact a lot with the table viewer, I think it already gives you it offers you a different dimension into your data, as you were also saying. So I think maybe looking at my database in Channel or in any other tool like Channel, that might not be necessarily the way I want to consume that information, or might not be the easiest way for me to consume that information. So if I'm able to basically alter the way that information is given to me by just, well, basically typing it, right? Like saying, maybe show me all the action items, but then maybe I could say, I don't know if that's possible even, but I could say, show me the action items along with maybe there's a relationship to the table that I need to see. Show me the action items with their respective owners and dependencies with X or Y table. So I think that is where this kind of display of information really becomes powerful, because it allows me to control it and alter it in any way I want, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it is very, I mean, this could basically be a CRM in a lot of ways. And I kind of find it interesting how, I mean, if I'm able to go straight to the data source, and then if I'm able to create, if I have all the routes and I have all the capability, and then what's left is just being able to see it, and then can this not be anything then at that point? I mean, there's something very interesting to me about about going straight to the data and just being able to edit it and just going to cut through the UI part of it almost. Yeah, so certainly I find this to be interesting because it's not really lost on me that like as I'm looking at this, like I feel like, am I looking at my database or am I looking at my app? What's the difference anymore? I'm not sure.
Robert, we've alluded to Xano in the course of this. I appreciate that's a big part of your practice. But for people who haven't seen it before, Xano is it's a backend system, right, for building APIs and cron tasks, and has integrated database you were just sort of showing there. And the which means there's sort of a complicated part, like you're talking about, like how to go see all this data because it has your data in it. But then you're also, you're using it to develop workflows and software, right? Software that might be incorporating Xano, right? I remember you alluding to the person from your meetup that you talked about a few minutes ago, who you said wasn't even using Xano. Of course, she is using Xano. She's just using Xano through Snappy, right?
Yes.
And so it becomes a different kind of experience to be able to create. And JC has the framework that he had introduced us to in our first meeting together, where he talked about creation, execution, and inspection. I think are the three big pillars he was seeing for use of these UI elements. And you've been showing us quite a bit of inspect, right? How to go get closer to the data and showing us how valuable that is. I think there's a really good point that like one can just start there and like be adding a lot of value. But what have you either done or what are you seeing on the going forward for the create and execute side to be able to actually manifest your intent and get it to get the AI to do the things you want as a result of your interaction with these kinds of UI elements? How do you get it to do things, or how do you think about getting to do things for you?
So I would say that yes, like when it comes to being able to have it do things, I look at that in terms of it depends on what it is a person is really trying to do. I think like there's two ways of thinking about it. For me, it's sometimes it can be a little bit meta because I'm thinking about building the tool which builds the other stuff. But then there's the actual stuff that I build with the tool. And so there's two kind of different categories.
So I'm actually thinking about like going back to the ChatGPT part, right, where we were looking at a bunch of different views and widgets, right? Those views and widgets are really useful in the context of things done, right? Yes. And so I'm thinking about that part where we're actually doing the work. Now, part of this allows you to make smart decisions because you can just see more of what's going on, and then you can sort of express things using the chat, and all that's fine. Kind of like the way you currently use like the TUI approach when you're like doing cloud coding stuff, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But the other half of what's really valuable, I think, about being able to interleave, right, these graphical interfaces with the more textual interface of chat, is being able to not just have better information, make better decisions, but also be able to express yourself better. This is what I want to do, because in a way that has more precision, right, than just saying roughly, hey, kind of make something like this happen. Or sort of talking into it using the microphone thing or what have you, both of which are valuable, right? But there's like an additional opportunity here. So I'm sort of it's really in that vein of sort of thinking about as our last topic here too. What are you seeing on the going forward? Either things you might have experimenting with, or just sort of where you see the future of Snappy being on that how to make work happen.
Yes, I think that there's a progression of where the tool starts and maybe like if I almost look at it like as a spectrum where for me, I find that when I'm starting to build up some type of capability, I'm starting off with building it without the GUI. Mm-hmm. It's the most effective, really, actually, to build it at the level of like as a CLI. Mm-hmm. Essentially, it's something for as a TUI, and then it moves from there. Like because it can't. I find that this is like the last stage. Like in order for me to earn this, it has to be something that I have to have totally in control at TUI level, which is constantly in development. I can't and once I get to that point, which I think is it's only going to be achievable here once I feel that I have it totally finished, essentially, like at a previous stage, right? Like this is just a visual representation, like, of the problem has already been solved. And I can say that for this particular, like, so for example, if I wanted to just do stuff like to create tables and things like that, I see there being, I could see there being something useful here in terms of collecting information, in terms of like as an interview process. Definitely, I could see that being very helpful, actually. And honestly, just even talking about it kind of gets me interested, like excited actually to want to do it, because like this is actually just getting my brain going again on all this stuff. But but I think that just like when I first started with the Snappy MCP, like, yes, tables are great and the schemas and stuff like that are great. But my main thing is being able to is for it to be able to build APIs really reliably, like really reliably for anybody. I mean, I can build APIs with this very well, but there are people who I've helped with building with it very well, and they build like way faster now. But there's still a whole other group of people that I want to bring it to as well. And so again, like this, I see it eventually working here as like something that is kind of like point and click. Hey, I want this, and then I want this, and I want to do this, or let me describe what I want, and then it's going to just, and then it'll just appear like that. That's how much complexity that I want to absorb. And for it to work like that there, it has to work like that here first, basically. Okay. And once it works like that, so yeah, but definitely when I see ultimately, I just think that, you know, again, like I'm looking to bridge that gap. And I think maybe it's a good thing that I haven't bridged it yet, because it just means, I think that's the point, right? It's like if all this, that's why, you know, you yourselves are working on focusing on this area, right? Because there's all these questions that are still unanswered, and I can say that it's probably, you know, I've answered a lot of different questions with other stuff, you know, for people, and this was actually something that, yeah, I'm definitely experiencing friction with. Maybe just also goes to show how much, yeah, that there's something worth solving here as well. Because I don't have I have ideas, but I don't have answers yet for, or like examples of it taking that type of action yet.
We have ideas, but we don't have answers. I think that sort of describes the state of the world right now. And we all keep shipping more, building more, and learning more. And I am so grateful that we could learn with you here today. Robert, can I ask, where can people find you after, you know, they hear from you and they hear, oh wow, that guy was really smart. Where can they learn more about you and what you're doing?
Well, they can come to either my website at snappy.ai, or if there's a person who is using Xano, you can also check out xano.snappy.ai, and there's you know, like I said, I'm very easy to get in touch with. A person can book a call with me, and in like 40 minutes or something, I can get somebody building with Xano, even if you've never touched Xano before. So yeah, those are probably the easiest ways to get in touch.
Super cool. Thanks so much, sir.
Cool.
Sure.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you
We'll
so
do
much.
this again soon. See you guys.
For sure.
See you.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.